about to provide a critique on a mock interview that we've just conducted. This will be a value for people in any industry, not just law school, because it's a basic communicative practice. Much like anything, and much like anything else, people oftentimes overlook the important aspects of communication, which we're just going, which we'll talk about here. First thing that I want to say before you walk into a room, you got to tell yourself two things, two very fundamental aspects of an interview. Number one, you can't control anything. You can't. You can't control the temperature of the room. You can't control the amount of people interviewing you. You can't control the time of day. You can't control if I'm hungry, more focused on something else. But more importantly, you can't control how you think I'm perceiving you. Right? Right? It's out of your hands. As an extension, the only thing you can control is, well, yourself. That's it, right? You can only control yourself. We'll explore that in just a moment. The second thing I want you to actively tell yourself in the anteroom or the waiting room is that because you can't control anything, you're not going to try to impress me. What's the key word? Try. Try. Why is that the key word? Well, it's simply because when people try, they oftentimes try too hard, right? Most of what I'm going to tell you, you already know. We're just putting it back into context, right? How do we try too hard? Well, we'll explore that shortly, okay? But if you can tell yourself those two things when you walk in the room, you're going to do much better than 90% of the other applicants out there. Number one, you can't. You can't what?
Can't control
you can't control anything except for
me, myself.
Except for yourself. And number two, because you can't control anything,
don't try to control.
Don't try to control them, and don't try to impress me. Right? Good. Now, let me tell you this. Nonverbal communication comprises more than 80% of all human communication. If you doubt me, I'll pose this scenario to you. Let's say you see a friend of yours across a football field, right? And there's a lot of people out there at the game, and you want to try and get his attention. You start shouting his name. Sean, no, Sean, yay, turn around. He can't hear you, right? But the second he turns around and he sees you from across the field, what do you want to do to him?
Wave. You
want to wave. And what does he do in return?
Waves back. He
waves back. What's he doing? He's using nonverbal communication, right? Your voice falls flat approximately 18 inches out of your mouth. So we want to focus on the nonverbals, the auxiliary communication, because frankly, that's the most important communication, is the nonverbal stuff, right? What you don't say is more important than what you do say, because I'm not going to remember most of what you tell me walking out of this room. Ask yourself, am I interviewing many people?
Yes.
Yes. In this economy, absolutely, right? I'm not going to remember what you say. I'm going to remember very specific elements of what you say. So why don't we supplement it with wonderful nonverbal communication, right? Now let's walk in the door, okay? Are you familiar with the phrase of a snap judgment? Someone just made a snap judgment about this person, right? Of course we're familiar with the phrase, but have we ever stopped to analyze what goes into a snap judgment? No, we haven't. Let me break it down into four basic nonverbal aspects, right? Number one, all you can control is yourself. So control your enthusiasm about the interview, right? Be enthusiastic about the prospect that you have a limited interview slot that somebody else couldn't get. They had 400 applications, 5 interviews. You were one of the 5. Obviously, you're doing something right already, right?
Yes.
Be enthusiastic about the fact that you are here. If you're a young actor, it's not about the parts you get, it's about having the audition, right?
Right.
That means you're doing your work. Yeah. The rest of it is out of your hands. Make sense?
Yes.
So be enthusiastic about the event. That's going to spiral off into so many other avenues. Number two, as you walk in the door, professional dress is key, right? Well, how do we determine what is good professional dress? Very simply, conduct research on the company beforehand, because you never want to come dressed above the employer or beneath the employer. This is trying to build a sense of mutual respect and compatibility, right? This is not about determining that you're better than me or that you don't care.
Right.
If it's a 3-piece suit office, come dressed in a 3-piece suit, or a business dress for young women, you know, skirts right around the knee, not very high, right? If it's an office more like myself, where we dress in polos and slacks, a 3-piece suit to this employer might be too much. You're trying too hard, right? Likewise, if you come in jeans, They might think that you don't really care. We know this, but it's oftentimes overlooked, right? The third element is handshakes. We've established that there's a right way to do a handshake before, but have we ever analyzed what's good versus what's bad? Well, let me tell you what's bad, and as a consequence, you'll discover what's a good handshake, okay? There are really 4 types, if you think about it. There's what I call a bone crusher handshake. We're all familiar with it, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's got a Napoleon complex, who wants to demonstrate he's been working out like Arnold, right?
Exactly.
It's like Arnold and Dutch in Predator, right?
Exactly.
You son of a bitch!
Yeah,
And the Titanic muscle
There
clap,
it
you know?
is, yeah.
And the earthquakes happen.
Yeah.
That really doesn't build mutual respect,
No.
does it? It's simply trying to decide whose arm is going to break first,
Exactly.
right? On the opposite side of the table, we've got what I call the dead fish. Pretty self-explanatory, but let me do it just to hear the grin and the weirdness. Hi, I'm Sean. Nice to meet you.
Oh, God.
Right? You see, it's not very good.
No.
I think a cousin of the dead fish is what I call the princess handshake, right? The princess is an antiquated form of showing respect, but in an era where we want to shatter glass ceilings, we don't like to use princess handshakes. And you're probably already familiar with the protocol. I'm Sean. Nice to meet you.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We want to show mutual respect. And any one of these can be adopted and worked hand in hand with, no pun intended, a sweaty version of each, right? You get nervous. How do we avoid sweaty handshakes? Well, keep your hands splayed in the waiting room, right? Keep them out of your warm area because it's going to make them moist. If you need to, come prepared with talcum powder, baby powder. It's okay. But keep your hands open, not balled, and bring baby powder if you need to, right? So what's a good handshake? If it's on a dead fish, if it's on a princess, if it's on a bone crusher, there's obviously one more, the fourth, the right way, right? A mutual respect, a sign of mutual respect. Now, a proper handshake is adopted by holding web to web, right? Web to web, 1 to 2 pumps while we maintain eye contact. Now, we don't shake from the forearm or the wrist because that's where the power comes. That's where you want to break bones. You shake from the shoulder because that's where the respect comes from, right? So go web to web, look him in the eye, 1 or 2 pumps, shake from the shoulder. Hi, I'm Sean. Nice to meet you. Very good. You see it? If you go web to web, you can almost feel the compassion there. It sounds a little hokeyed, but just go web to web, okay? That's a handshake. The final piece of nonverbal communication that we'll talk about of the 4, and just to recall, it's enthusiasm, right? It's professional dress, it's handshakes, and lastly, it's body language, right? As you walk in the room and you sit down at the table, body language is key, right? Again, you wave, I wave back. Makes sense? So how do we adopt proper body language in an interview? It's a simple game. It's called mirroring, right? You want to mirror the body language of the employer. Now, if there are more than one person interviewing you, if there is more than one person interviewing you, rather, adopt the body language of the person with the most prominence in the room, right? So, for instance, and we'll play this game on both sides of the table so you can see it from the employer's perspective. I'm the employer. I have a 6-figure job, a corner office, 3 cars, 5 houses. I'm living the good life. I've got the view of the beach, right? I have the prestige, which you want, right? Okay. Notice my windows. Lovely office, right? Well, I have nothing to worry about in this interview. I'm relaxed.
Right.
I'm wanting to find somebody like me to fill my office because an interview is not about you getting a job. It's about me. It's all about me fulfilling a need, right?
Yeah.
It's about someone who can fit into my puzzle best of all, not vice versa.
Right.
So if I sit back and relaxed with my back against the chair, I want the candidate to do the same. Back and relax with their back against the chair, right? If I sit forward and engaged, obviously I'm keen on listening on the table, sit forward and engage on the table, right? And now likewise, if I'm feeling very formal, I want to sit straight up and down, do the same, right? Now, let's flip the table, okay? You're the employer. You've got the fine district attorney's office job, okay? You've got 6 houses, 3 cars, right? 5 kids, right? Living the good life. That's it. You've got no worries. How would you sit in the interview? Back and relaxed.
Yes.
You're back and relaxed against the chair. Here's somebody who's not mirroring. How do you feel about me?
Way you're trying too hard.
I'm trying too hard, right? I'm obviously an eager beaver.
Yeah.
Likewise, on the other end of the coin,